All right. Hey, everybody. It is Thursday night, January 18th, if you can believe it. Um, and I have a new question or a thought to pose to you is how do you get perspective? I had a great conversation with a colleague today, and we were talking about perspective. Actually, a couple different folks I was talking to today uh, as I was getting after it. And so I'd love to just pose the question to you: how do you get perspective in your life? And this could be in different domains, of course. Um, but are you able to zoom in and zoom out at different levels? For those of you that don't know, I have a lot of different varied backgrounds. I've done GIS, geographical information systems. There's always scales and maps and things like that, right? And so it's one thing to be zoomed at a certain level and you have a great perspective and understanding of the lay of the land, right? And then it's something totally different when you zoom out and you zoom out and zoom out. How many of you guys have like played around with like Google Earth or maps? I mean, it's fascinating. I love it. Hey, Carla, I enjoy it because I just love the diversity of views and perspective. Um, but how many of you oftentimes just get stuck in maybe one perspective or perhaps maybe just extremes where you're going from very very low one and going far to the other, but can you move in between there and perspectives. And I use a really powerful framework. I was just talking to some men that we did what we call fat map workshop this past weekend as part of my coaching program, where we help get perspective on where do we want to go in the next 12 months or so, what we call an impossible game. And so I have you guys consider this idea of perspective. How do you gain perspective? What tools or resources do you use, or what mindsets do you have that serve you to help you get in power, get clarity in where you actually want to go, or do you even know what you really want? Sometimes we need perspective in that. Sometimes we have circumstances and life situations around us that kind of force us or lead us into gaining different perspectives. I was just sharing and talking with my sister tonight when we're remembering our dad and certain situations and circumstances, and when you're dealing with end of life circumstances, it gives you a different perspective that you didn't have before. Some of these things, it's better if we can get ahead of it and start preparing ourselves rather than when we're kind of forced, if you will, to have a different perspective. We're pulled out of our normal day-to-day life, right? And those do make us have a different perspective. Um, uh, there are power in being able to move fluidly between where you're at and where you want to go, where the facts of your life right now, and getting clearer on what that might look like. Um, there's a great book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind. Well, how the heck do you begin with the end in mind? How could I even visualize or become that? I'm not even that person right now. Well, there's steps that you can take, and that's something that we do and we dig into in a coaching program is getting clearer at that. And a simple framework I just want to share with you guys tonight, if you're not clear on how to get perspective, particularly when you're setting goals or targets, you're here now. You kind of understand the lay of the land. You know the reality of where I'm at now. That's not too difficult to that perspective. But to step up or to move into a new peak, a new place where you want to traverse to, you have to begin to explore what that might look like. And so I use a simple three-part strategy here, or framework, I should say, is you start with what's realistic when you're planning your goals. What could I do that really isn't going to change dramatically? You might move some things a little bit. So let's say, where our sales goal is, 5%. Okay, that's not going to be too great. That's pretty realistic. I could get there. Let's say you're living in a house and you want to move it into a new mortgage and you're paying, let's just say you're paying $5,000 a month, and you're like, well, I could probably move into a little bit bigger house, and if I adjust the rates and whatnot, I could make it 6,000 a month. I could make it work. That's something realistic, and that's a perspective of kind of where you're at. And then you kind of think of this idea of radical. Okay, what would radical look like? And I'll throw out kind of a multiplier, if you will, of maybe 4 to 5 times where you're at. That's a different perspective. That's a different person that has to show up in order to get there. You cannot be the same person today right now. And so you want to start this idea, how do I get to my that place, that radical place? So you have to start to envision what that person would look like. How do you show up? What kind of person do I need to become in order to get 4 or 5 times what I'm at now? So I gave you the example of, let's just say, a mortgage of, you know, you have $5,000 a month mortgage, and you 4 times that, that's a $20,000 a month mortgage. That's huge, right? That's pretty radical. And so if we scale this up in this framework of what's realistic and radical, and I'm going to give you one more leap, if you will, into what I call the impossible. And that's usually something like 8 to 10x. So you're going again. That's an impossible one. It's really hard for our mind to go from the $2,000, $5,000 mortgage to the $20,000 mortgage to you know, you know, jumping these up to a $40,000 mortgage, or what the case is. I'm just giving you guys some numbers for perspective here. Uh, it could be, for example, in my impossible game, I could do my workout, my daily workout of 15 minutes of regular exercise every day, and then maybe doing one activity that out of the week, or something different. So maybe it's hiking or biking in the case of. But what if we kept cumulatively adding those things in? And so you start with this idea of how to scale or get perspective of what's realistic, like what doesn't I change, what's radical, maybe 4 to 5 times what you would be doing, and then impossible, something that's like 8 to 10. The reason I want you to go through this exercise of getting perspective, of being able to move between those, is because reality is we make steps and progressive moves to get to the impossible, to get to that high, that perspective, if you will, that peak that's out there in the distance. We just can't leapfrog way over there. We have to kind of create a ladder or steps to get there. And if you don't know how to create those steps or that way to get there, you're kind of spinning your wheels and you're stuck in your current perspective, your current understanding. It's like, what mindsets do you have to have? What resources are needed for you to get there? Um, this is where coming in for me, it's one thing to do this exercise of myself and alone, is another thing to come in, and like I did on this past Saturday, where I met with other men, and we do this, and then we actually collide in a good way, and we share our perspectives. We share, like, here's what I understand, or this is what I believe to be something reasonable, radical, or impossible. And then we can challenge each other. Is that truly reasonable? Is that truly radical? Are you actually, is that impossible? Because oftentimes we set our hurdles too low. We set our goals and our targets too low because we kind of stay closer to reasonable. Maybe we get to radical. Maybe. I don't see a lot of people jump into impossible. I'm telling you, it is worth it. It is challenging, but it is so worth it, because this is where you can actually um, literally move quicker than you ever have in your life when you use this kind of concept and ability for perspective to gain this understanding of where am I at and where do I want to go, and how to get there. And tied with that, which I won't get to tonight, but I'd happy to talk with you some other time. You can message me, send me a note. There's tools and resources I use to help in production and how to get there on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. Um, that being said, though, we want to make sure you're clear on how to move between that. So there's an activity where you're going through yourself, right? Understanding this, and I like to look at it holistically. This is what makes it impossible, because when we look at perspectives, when you zoom out, and let's use a map, right? You're not just looking at, like, maybe your house or your street where you're at, right? Is you zoom out, you look at your neighborhood, zoom out, you look at, oh, look at the mountains, look at the trees, you look at the valley, you look at your city, you zoom out, oh my goodness, the county. Once you start to look out and you see this greater vision, you see what can be, and that's where we're going to the impossible. But if you don't have uh, a group, a tribe, other individuals where you can do this, and this is where my conversation was with a colleague today. It's one thing to do it in yourself. It's another thing to kind of test it and bring it along and find other people that want to go along this journey with you. That is where it's so powerful and impactful. I'm very, very grateful that I have not only do I coach others, but I have groups that I'm a part of. I started years ago investing in masterminds and coaching to help me elevate my game because reality was if you're kind of the king of the hill where you're at, you're not having additional perspectives coming in and feeding that. I worked for companies where they were like very siloed and they didn't have perspectives on and things to consider because they were siloed. They had their perspectives and they kind of were an echo chamber. Well, I would encourage you: don't be an echo chamber, don't be siloed. Find other like-minded folks. If not me, find others. I'm one resources out there uh, and I'm all about liberation and getting you in freedom, getting you into a place where, man, I am very clear on what I want. I know how to get there. I have a target. I have a path that I can go. I have a team around me. I have individuals that have surrounded myself to help me get there. Um, and recognizing that we need different voices and different perspectives from others. I lead in training those folks so you understand what is your natural leadership voice. How do you show up? How do you interpret the data of the world? How do you go through this and make decisions, right? What's your worldview? How do you process information? Well, the reality is, I was talking to a woman today that was super creative and innovative and amazing ideas. And some people are just really gifted in that way, and they can help provide you feedback and perspective and understanding that you would not have had otherwise. And if you don't have people like that, number one, you're missing a whole segment of understanding and perspective. And this is where I believe God brings different people into our lives for various reasons. We can learn and grow. And if you're teachable and mature and can be willing to be humble and listen, you can learn so much from these. You can allow God to speak through these folks and that help you gain that perspective. I've learned that that's so important for me to be humble and listen to get perspective. When I get the defenses and the walls go up, yeah, I have difficulty learning and taking that in. So I want you to just consider what's your perspective. How do you get it? I'd love you to share, drop a comment in here as you if you're not catching me live here, but watching this again, share with me how do you get perspective? What do you encourage others? Should they consider? I think it's always important to learn from others. I'm sharing you what I learn, how I'm applying this in my life. I love to learn from others as well. But think about this: reasonable. What's reasonable? That gives you a perspective where you're at now. What's radical? Something 4 to 5 times where you're at. What would that look like? And something impossible, something like 8 to 10 times where you're at. Whatever that is in your business, physical, your body. Could be how you're showing up in your relationships or what you're doing in a relationship. So, like, it's one thing to go on a weekly date night. That's pretty reasonable with my wife. I'll give you an example. But maybe a quarterly getaway is more radical. Or what about a 2 week paid inclusive vacation? That could be really impossible for some people. I want to help you get perspective because when you have that, this is where you could start to make the transformation. This is where you can start to become this person as you start to realize and get these perspectives like, oh, I can be this. I can go in that direction. I can take steps in that way. So I thank you guys for listening to me tonight. Like I said, I'm committed to bringing value in helping others along this journey from what I've done and applying this in their life. And you guys can see my own journey here. I come to let you guys know that what is working and not working. And this has been huge for me. Reasonable, radical, impossible, using this framework to understand and get perspective on my goals, my tasks, where do I want to go. So if you're catching on this or rewatching this, please reach out to me. I'm happy to have got great tools. So many of them are free. I can help just share with you at no cost to you at all, just an opportunity to help you along your journey, point you in the right way. And if you think you need something more, I have a coaching program and all that stuff. That is additional as people need it. But I'm just wanting to be here tonight to help you understand how to get unstuck and get a clearer perspective so you can know where you want to go and make this the best year ever. Make 2024 the best year you've ever had because you know you're where you want to go and you're going to end the year strong. We're in the middle of January already. Some people have already fallen off of some of those New Year resolutions. Let's keep you motivated. Let's keep you going and having a lasting impact for yourself and for those around you. You deserve it, and those around you as well. So, all right, guys, I love you guys. Thanks so much for hanging on with me tonight, and I appreciate the views and comments and shares. Until tomorrow, I'll be back. All right, take care, guys.